Hello, my name is Melissa Garland, and this is my literacy and learning theory presentation. The two theories that I chose to compare and to study for this presentation are cognitive constructivism and automaticity. My research that I'm doing for my research paper is focusing on vocabulary acquisition and its effects on comprehension. And so this is going to talk a little bit about that, but mostly just about these two theories in general. Okay, let's get started. Okay, cognitive constructivism. Cognitive constructivism was developed originally, it's most credited to Jean Piaget. So, Jean Piaget was a well-known French-Swiss developmental psychologist, and he wrote lots of books and articles about learning before he developed the theory of cognitive constructivism in 1953. So at the time, most of the research on education and learning had focused a lot on passive instruction, where the teacher simply transmitted information to the student. The teachers gave instruction and gave information to the students, and the students simply received it. But Piaget didn't necessarily agree with this. He had studied lots of children learning and playing, and he ended up considering them to be like little scientists. And he began to realize that they were constructing their own concepts in their memory to learn. After Piaget, a lot of people began to get on board with this constructivist idea of learning, and after him, the most notable would be Weide, who focused more on the social aspect of constructing knowledge. He developed the theory of social constructivism, and that focused, like I said, a lot more on social interactions and how that affected constructing knowledge. Cognitive constructivism, a little bit more about it. Our textbook explains that constructivism emphasizes that the idea that comprehending text is very much an active process. So that's exactly what Piaget had learned. Children construct their own meaning rather than the teacher dispensing knowledge during cognitive constructivism. Two big ideas within cognitive constructivism are assimilation and accommodation. So assimilation is basically when a child brings new knowledge into their schema that they already have. Accommodation is the way that they accommodate that new information, or they make it make sense to what they already knew. They accommodate it and they bring it into their overall new knowledge. They construct their new knowledge through assimilation and accommodation. Okay, a little bit more about how to support cognitive constructivism in the classroom. Instead of just telling students information and giving them the correct answers, it's important to ask them questions and give them support so that they can reach the answers themselves. So rather than just saying knowledge and being the source of all knowledge, the teacher's role is more of a facilitator of discussion and supporting them coming up with their own knowledge and constructing their own knowledge. It's important to engage students in active rather than passive learning experiences, and this very much pertains to teaching vocabulary or new content, and it's important to allow them to construct their own knowledge. So a good example of this would be when you're starting a new unit and you're introducing a new topic or even just a new story if you're teaching a language arts class or a reading class. A lot of teachers begin with, these are the vocabulary words, these are the definitions, copy them in your notebooks, or some kind of an activity like that where they go ahead and they give them the words and they go ahead and give them the definitions. Well, if you're a cognitive constructivist, then you don't necessarily think that this is the best practice. So a better way of introducing these vocabulary words would be, okay, here are the words, and I want you to explore, I want you to inquire about them, I want you to talk about them and do some research and figure out their meanings yourselves. Construct your own definitions for these words. So that would be one example of how to use cognitive constructivism when teaching vocabulary. Another important thing for cognitive constructivism that I kind of touched on earlier was the importance of discussions, debates, and open inquiry. like I said, you're not just giving them information, you're asking them questions and letting them think, and it's good to let them think out loud. And also debating allows them to see different sides to things so that they're able to accommodate some new knowledge into their schema. And of course, inquiry is a great way for them to construct some new knowledge. Okay. For cognitive constructivism, the next theory that I want to talk about is automaticity. So automaticity was the theory was developed by David LaBerge, I'm not exactly sure, and J. Samuels, and its role in the reading process. They did that research in 1974. That's when they published it. So they started off by studying the brain's attentional capacity, and they realized that the brain is really only able to focus completely on one task at a time. A lot of people think that multitasking, and that's pretty easy to do, when in reality, the brain is really only capable of focusing on one at a time. So they concluded that some tasks have to be automated, and that basically just means that they're able to be completed without a lot of thought. Okay, like I kind of said earlier, automaticity refers to the ability to read quickly or automatically. So our textbook states that doing something automatically is to do something effortlessly and with little attention. So the book gives us an incredible example of an automatic process, was driving a stick shift. So with driving a stick shift, there are so many things going on. You're having to work that gear shift, you're having to push the gas pedal, push the brake pedal, read the signs on the road, watch out for other cars, and think about the direction you're driving in. So being able to complete some of those processes automatically, you would never get anywhere. Most of us with experience driving master the stick shift, or any gear shift. We master the gas pedal and the brake pedal, and we master all of that before we can really focus on driving. So we have to be able to master those tasks automatically. So that's very similar to reading. Because the mind's attention capacity is limited to only one thing, some of those reading processes must be automatic for them to all occur at once. So some of those processes include recognizing words and assigning meanings to those words. So readers, in order to be able to read proficiently, they have to be able to recognize words and assign meanings to them automatically. Okay, so classroom application. Students really need to be given a lot of time for practicing reading texts multiple times, and this allows them to practice fluency and automaticity, so they have to be able to read quickly and fluently. To do this, you can give them lots of time to practice reading texts over and over, and also let them work on mastering high-frequency words and vocabulary words, and that way they'll be able to decode words and recognize their meanings automatically. So a great example of this is flashcards, and I know it sounds boring, but sometimes kids need them. They need to be able to recognize sight words or high-frequency words, and they also need to be able to know those vocabulary words backwards and forwards, so that when they're reading, they don't have to think so hard about every word that they encounter. Okay, so they sound like two totally different theories. You've got cognitive constructivism, where you're really actively learning, you're actively making meaning and things like that, and then you've got automaticity, which seems like you're not doing a lot of active thinking and a lot of active learning, but what I've uncovered in researching these two is that they're actually a lot more closely related than one might think. When introducing the need for automaticity in reading, our textbook describes the sub-processes involved in reading, and these include recognizing words, assigning meanings to words, constructing the meanings of sentences and larger units, and relating the information gleaned from the text to information we already have. So I'm sure you noticed in there that key word, constructing the meanings of sentences and words. So in order to be able to read, the automaticity theory really does base itself on the reading process in cognitive constructivism. You have to be able to do all those processes, but automaticity basically just says you have to do it automatically. Essentially, cognitive constructivism is referring to the process of constructing meaning while reading, and automaticity just allows the reader to do so. If a reader doesn't have automaticity with a wide range of words, he or she will be unable to focus on constructing the meaning of new words or of the text as a whole. So I'm sure you've seen it in your classrooms. You have students that have not mastered automaticity with either high-frequency words, or they don't have automaticity with a wide vocabulary. And when they're reading, they are taking forever to decode every single word and to think about the meanings of each word. And by the time they get to the end of the sentence or to the end of the paragraph, they just don't have a clue what they've read because it's taken so much effort. So it's important for them to have that automaticity. Technology components. We all know the importance of incorporating technology in the classroom. It's a great, engaging way to get student learning. So here are a couple of suggestions. I'm going to start off with the cognitive constructivism resources. The first one, I'm sure you know, is Discovery Education. And this website has a lot of great videos. It's got some passages, it's got games and activities. And that's a great way to allow kids to kind of explore what they're working on, what they're learning about. So the example here about vocabulary at the beginning of the unit, I said instead of giving students the words and giving them the definitions and asking them to copy them and memorize them, they should be able to construct their own meanings. So this is a great example. You can give them their list of vocabulary words, you can give them the title of the unit or what they're going to be studying, and then put them on Discovery Education. Let them explore, let them find out what these things are, and let them figure it all out on their own. That's a great website to let them just explore and inquire about a new unit or about a new set of vocabulary. Brain Pop is another one that does similar things to Discovery Education. It's got lots of videos, games, it's got a little bit of text in there for them to read, and it also has great little quizzes for them to assess their understanding. So like I said, this is great for letting them explore new topics and things like that, construct new meaning about a unit. For automaticity, there are a couple of great websites. Starfall is the first one. It's mostly for younger students. I found it to be helpful with pre-K through first grade and possibly second grade if you have some lower level readers. There are a lot of stories and activities where the text is read aloud to them. They can read it on their own, or they can choose to have it read aloud to them. In these stories, there's a lot of repetition, and there are a lot of high-frequency words and basic vocabulary words, and hearing this repetition and reading all of these words over and over will allow the student to develop more automaticity with those sounds and those words. For automaticity in the upper grades, however, I found that Quizlet is a wonderful resource. So after your students have constructed their own meanings for words, own definitions for vocabulary, you can create a set of flashcards for them, and that will just help them really become familiar with those words. That way, when they encounter them later on in a text, they don't have to stop and think about what it means. They don't have to stop to sound out the word. They don't have to stop to think about, well, what does that word mean? No, they'll know it automatically, and they'll be able to read so proficiently because of that. So Quizlet's a great way to do that. For developing automaticity with high words, there's a great game on ABC. It's Sight Word Bingo. And there are a lot of sight word games online, but this is the one that I have found my students they enjoy the most. Okay, my evaluation of cognitive constructivism. As an article that I read stated, it's widely accepted and it's used in most classrooms today. It's probably the most prevalent theory that we hear about in schools today. We're constantly hearing our administrators and other school leaders telling us, make sure the students are active, make sure they're engaged, make sure they're active in their own learning. So it's definitely something that you hear about a lot. I think it's an extremely valuable theory. However, I do think that it is pertaining mostly to when teachers are exposing the students to new texts and new content areas. And I don't necessarily think that it's comprehensive for reading instruction. So my evaluation of automaticity. An article that I found tells us that this theory has prevailed as one of the most dominant theories in reading because of its ability to explain how fluency developed. We all know how important fluency is, especially when it relates to comprehension. Without reading fluently, you are not going to be able to comprehend what you are reading. So automaticity is absolutely crucial for fluency, and it really explains how it works in the brain. However, just like with constructivism, I don't think that automaticity would be comprehensive as an instructional approach. So, putting it all together, I think it's important to combine the theories of cognitive constructivism and automaticity to create a balanced approach to reading instruction. Teachers should begin their instruction with opportunities for exploration, for inquiry, and for knowledge construction. But they should give repeat exposures to text, and that will allow students to develop automaticity, recognizing new words and incorporating them into their vocabulary. So these are my references, and I hope you all learned something. The end.